Thank you, Darren. Kevin started with a confession about only having read a quarter of The Spirit Level. Well, I'm going to confess that I haven't even read it, but I've read all the reviews, and Darren quotes it quite often, so I feel I've read it, and I was very glad to hear what Richard had to say about it. And I was going to talk about how if people actually did have a good quality of life, if they had decent houses and decent public services, then perhaps inequality in pay levels wouldn't matter. But Richard's blown that out of the water by saying that moving up together is a zero-sum game, and so I'll change my speech slightly. Thanks. Now, I come from a working-class background, and I absolutely know that my parents were not of a generation that had any sort of envy. And they, in fact, if they knew that somebody was earning a good salary, they actually thought that was okay, that they'd worked their way up and they deserved it. And there's a classic story in the Evening Standard a few years back about some fire brigade union bloke who had gone to a very, very expensive restaurant on expenses, paid £300 or something for a bottle of wine, and the Evening Standard journalist invited along a firefighter and his missus to go along and experience this restaurant. And when the woman actually opened the menu, she looked at the wines and she said, "You see, you didn't buy the most expensive. You just bought the one you liked." And there was that understanding that actually, you earn your money and you can spend it how you like. So in fact, I sort of have a concern that perhaps pay inequality is not something that actually drives a lot of dissatisfaction in society. But Richard obviously has convinced me otherwise. Now, I will say that here in London, in fact, the whole of Britain, we are facing some very tough years. But in fact, a lot of the things that we've taken for granted are actually going to crumble away, collapse away because of government cuts, because of the size of the cuts, the savagery of the cuts, and the speed of the cuts. And Londoners who are on low incomes, they care very much about their rents going up and the cost of food going up, and whether or not they can heat their houses, whether they can feed their children, whether they can get childcare. And so a council chief executive getting paid £200,000, it might annoy them, but cutting that salary in half won't actually supply them with decent housing. It certainly won't help their children get decent education and decent food. And the problem is really noticeable when councils do their best to cut costs by cutting senior salaries. And of course this is the right thing to do, but cutting senior pay won't actually supply the 30 or 40 million that the councils have to make up to actually supply all the services that they've been supplying over the past couple of decades. And the next 4 years in particular look particularly bleak for housing and public services. And the frustrating thing is we could have fixed this. It could have actually been very different. But the way it's going at the moment, it's going to get considerably worse. I'm going to ask you down to come off a bit when my 10 minutes is up, because I'm afraid once I get into this, I get a bit carried away, so follow with me. Now, 10% of social homes are non-decent, meaning they don't have decent kitchens and bathrooms. Almost half our privately rented homes are in a similar bad state. But the government is actually putting in only a fraction of the money that's needed to actually solve that particular problem. That means more and more, in fact, houses are going to move into non-decent. Poor quality housing, of course, also means that your heating costs go up because you don't have very good insulation, and your general standard of life is considerably lower. Now, Greens stand for election calling for real investment in social housing. And growing up in council house, 3-bedroom council house, very solid, garden front and back. I had a really good standard of growing up. I think it's fantastic. And I would like to think that every child has the opportunity to have decent housing. However, that is clearly not going to happen. The government, in fact, has decided it's going to cut more or less the whole of the social housing budget for this Parliament. Now that's going to have a huge impact. They say they will only fund so-called affordable rents, that are in fact, of course, anything but affordable. And this means that more and more people will actually become dependent on benefits, which means the benefits bill will go up. This means that things are getting worse. The cuts to housing benefit, in my view, are plain nasty and are actually going to force more people out of their homes and out of their communities. It will also increase homelessness. Just when homelessness charities, of course, are seeing their budgets being cut, some by 30%, some by more. So getting proper investment into social housing would make a huge difference to poorer Londoners and directly solve one of the inequalities. And I feel that solving this particularly toxic situation probably should be one of our highest priorities. And of course, it's not just people on very low incomes who struggle with London's dysfunctional housing market. Rents across the board have been going up much faster than incomes. Just as house prices rises have put ownership out of the reach of most Londoners. Part of this is because very rich and wealthy people can distort the market. But we could fix it by introducing solutions like land taxes and adequate funding for social housing. This would make society more equal as a result, but we'd be mainly trying to fix the problem of expensive housing. Now, it's also hard to see what the Mayor can do, and as a London Assembly member, I would like to say just a little bit at the end about what he can do. I was very interested in Kevin's ideas about that. It was true, or it is true, that the Mayor did call on various bodies to do something about low pay and actually paying people the London living wage rather than minimum wage in the hotel sector. However, when the GLA itself booked dozens and dozens of hotel rooms, they did not stipulate as part of that contract that the people who were servicing the hotel actually were paid the London living wage. So there was a lot of rhetoric. There was absolutely no action on this. So there's a long way to go in actually forcing some action. The Mayor controls the London budgets for economic development, for housing, transport, the police and the fire brigade, although of course there's been significant cuts in the past few years, all of those. He can't change the tax code or reform company structures. His circumscribed powers actually mean that we have to find the right button to push. Now he can do something about pay within the GLA group, both at the bottom and the top. And currently the biggest difference is in Transport to London, where the outgoing Crossrail Chief Executive Officer earned 35 times as much as the lowest paid staff last year. I really think that's dreadful. The Mayor can also influence contractors, for example by only selecting a cleaning company for this building who pays the London living wage, and to my knowledge I think that actually has happened. Now the Mayor can set up initiatives, and he can also lobby the government, although this can often be a slightly double-edged sword, as Boris did in fact lobby to scrap the 50p tax rate for London's richest people. Now what can Assembly members do? Well, we can try to influence the Mayor through formal questions, through motions, and sometimes through budget deals. That has been very effective in the past. And we can commit the Mayor to certain policies. We can get information on pay levels or funding for housing. We can get information and then we can advocate on behalf of Londoners. We also have committees where we can sort of shine a light on some of these topics and actually get cross-party support almost always on the solutions and present those to the Mayor. I have to say, he quite often just ignores the whole thing. We can, of course, and this is, in fact, probably the most effective thing that we can do. We can make a fuss. We can get into the media and we can actually say this is wrong and the Mayor's got to do something about it. And we do have a media-sensitive Mayor, and so this can be a way forward into improving the lot of Londoners. I would like to say that it's been a pleasure to listen to Richard and Kevin, and it does strike me that this is the whole issue of pay inequality, and the whole issue of inequality is something that is not only for us to worry about, but it is for the government to worry about it, and I simply do not understand their thinking in actually dismantling society in such a non-strategic way and leaving so many people floundering in poverty. Thank you.